departments. Does anyone have any questions on those? Okay. First item under administration, presentation of year-end 6/30/20 audit. We've got Pewing Company here that's going to go over that.
Yeah, this is Ted Holtz from Pewing Company, and he's going to be doing a presentation on the Office of Council of Mayor and Council.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go over the letter that you received, probably about a dozen sheets. We've got 7 numbered pages on it, but it's about several preliminary pages. I think it's the 4th sheet in is on page 1 at the very bottom of the page. It's a required communications page. Basically what this letter is, it goes over required communications that are on the left-hand side on pages 1 and 2 here regarding what our responsibilities are for the audit, overview of the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, and accounting policies and practices. The area discussed on the left, the comments are on the right. And then on page 2, goes over audit adjustments. We didn't have any, or any uncorrected misstatements you need to know about. There were none. No disagreements with management. No real significant issues discussed with management during the course of the audit. And the section called Letter Communicating Significant Deficiencies and Material Weaknesses in Internal Control. If we had findings, it would be referenced in here. The significance of this letter is if there's anything in the audit that you really need to be alarmed about or know about, it would be referenced in here to either the audit report or be referenced to another document. So, and there really isn't anything alarming that needs to be noted in here. Exhibit A on page 3 at the bottom is summary of significant accounting estimates. What's important to note here is that some numbers in the report are estimated numbers, like depreciations and estimated useful life, estimated how we depreciate it. Net pension liability, we have a pension, actually we have a net pension asset on the books, but it's an estimate based on numbers we get from the actuary. Same thing with the other post-employment benefits, or basically future healthcare costs. That is a liability amount that's on the books that we'll talk about in a moment. But this goes over what the accounting policy is, how it's estimated, and our basis for conclusion that it's reasonable, and we did deem it reasonable. Then on page 4 is a copy of the representation letter, 4 pages, that is what management represents to us as part of the audit. So that's what Terry and Barbara will sign for us. If there are no questions on that, I'll go into the big bound audit report document. And a few pages in Roman numeral 2, you'll see the 2 CPAs at the top of it. Roman numeral 2. This is our audit opinion on pages 2 and 3. The bottom of page 2 is the opinion section, and here's where we say that the financial statements referred to above are fairly presented, which is your standard clean opinion report. You want a clean opinion report, so just letting you know that audit report here is a clean opinion report. More information is continued on page 3. But like I said, that opinion section is the key part of this 2-page document. Page 4 starts, and I'm going to focus on balance sheet income statement in a moment, but I'm just going to also go over kind of the outlay of the report, what information's in this report. Page 4 for several pages is management's discussion and analysis. There is summary information and summary analysis presented here regarding your numbers. So if you want a kind of snapshot of how the finances were during the year, they're going to be in these roughly 10 pages from 4 to 14. Roman numeral 4 to Roman numeral 14. I like to look at the actual financial statements themselves, and that starts on regular number 1, which obviously is several pages in. This is your statement of net position, or basically your balance sheet. For governments, it's really complicated how they're reported. The statement of net position on page 1, and then the statement of activities on page 3. That is your balance sheet and income statement, as if the government's reporting on a full accrual basis. And remember, you budget on a budgetary or really a cash receipts, cash disbursements with some adjustments for accounts receivable that turn over quickly and accounts payable that do the same. So on pages 1 and 2, your balance sheet, you'll have non-current liabilities or non-current assets, like you'll have your fixed assets reported here. And on the liability side, you'll have long-term debt and your accrued post-retirement benefit or your OPEB liability amount. So, and also remember that the governmental activities on these pages 1, 2, and 3 are the critical numbers for the city. That's really your general fund and related funds. The business type activities is really OUD operations. It's considered a component unit of the city, so it is needed to be reported in these 3 pages here as a business type activity, just because of the relationship with the city. Your balance sheet for accrual basis, statement of net position, has governmental activities, has a positive total net position on the bottom of page 2 of about $12 million, so that's good. On page 3, the governmental activities is summarized, and this is on a full accrual basis, in the first column, which really the 5th column over. It's the first column that goes all the way from the top to the bottom. And your third to last number from the end is your change in net position, or you want that to be a positive number. In this case, it was a positive $390,000. So from a business type, from a full accruals perspective, factoring in depreciation expense, factoring in long-term or full accrual accounting, it still was a positive number for the year ended June 30th, 2020. With that said, we'll get away from the full accrual basis and look at the modified accrual basis, and that's what you budget off of. Your general fund and your governmental funds are reported, the balance sheets on page 4. And keep in mind, this is only going to show current assets and current liabilities, plus deferred inflows, which basically are like property taxes received in advance, for instance. At the bottom of that page, on the general fund column, your total fund balances were $3,799,000. Your unassigned was just a line above that is $3.4 million, $3,429,047. Those are healthy numbers, and we'll talk about that in correlation in just a moment when we switch over to page 6. Page 5 is just a reconciliation of your balance sheet from the governmental basis to the full basis. So on page 6, in the first column is your general fund, your revenues of $6.6 million, your expenditures, of $7.5 million, transfer in lieu of tax from the electric department, $1.2 million. So your change in fund balance for the general fund is $390,000. So a positive number, which you would like to see. Beginning of year fund balance in the general fund was $3.4 million. End of the year, nearly $3.8 million, $3,799. Now, a good comparison to know how healthy the city is to look at your undesignated, unassigned fund balance. So on page 4, that is that last number before the subtotal, the third to last number in that first column. And that is $3,429,047. So that is your fund balance that is not tied to something else. It's free and clear, basically. So that is basically how much is carried forward that's free and clear. You like to compare that to what your total obligation for a year is. And in this case, that's normally determined in taking your expenditures, which on page 6 is $7.5 million, plus any transfers out. And there's a transfer out of about 41,000. So roughly, 7,550,000, in that range is your total commitments for a year. So compare the 3.4 million to the 7.5, it means you have a reserve of roughly in the range of 4 to 5 months on an annual basis. So that's a healthy amount. You'd like to see a minimum of 2 months to 3 months, and you're above that. For a city this size, I would want to be over 3 months plus, and you are. On page budgetary comparisons on page 8. So this is always good to see. There's a column for original budget, column for final budget, because it's always good to see if the budget significantly changed during the year from when it originally adopted. In this case, there was not significant change. And then your actual column. Now, your actual column is significantly less both on revenue and expense, really just because of the crazy year it was, there wasn't a lot of grant expenditures. You budgeted for grant revenue and grant expenses in the range of 4.7 million, and you spent just a couple $100,000. So that's why there's a difference there. But the good news is your revenue, as we pointed out earlier, is about 6.6 million in column 3, and your expenses plus your other financing sources resulted in a positive net change of 390,000 in the general fund. Given a year that we've battled COVID and all, that's a positive thing. There are a lot of detail as far as that. This is a summary page on the general fund budget and actual on page 8. Page 9 starts a multi-page where you can look at the different departments, going all the way through page 15. The proprietary fund statements beginning on page 16 through 20 are really statements summarizing LUB operations. Footnotes start on page 21, narrative descriptions, and then tables supporting balance sheet numbers, and that goes all the way through page 48. Required supplementary information is on page 49, and these are individual tables on your pension information, including your total pension liability, pension assets that are held to satisfy those liabilities, and then your net pension obligation. And your net pension is actually a small positive number, which is really good to see. On your OPEB, which is on page 51, your future health costs or other post-employment benefits, health costs after retirement, that number is 1.4 million liability, which is a healthy amount, but by the same token, it's not too surprising what I see in other governments your size. And a lot of that's really because there's not set aside funds to pay for that. Then we have additional schedules, a lot which are on LUB. There's a column in the beginning where we're talking about the general fund, also for non-major governmental funds. This is summarized, and that's the drug fund, the State Street Aid Fund, Special Police Fund, Capital Projects Fund. That information is summarized on page 55 and 56 to know which, and those totals carry forward to that, I believe it was to page 6 in the beginning. Then you have some statistical information starting on page 64. Solid waste fund summary on page 69. And then your compliance sections all the way in the back on page 75. Here, if there were any compliance findings, and sometimes we have compliance findings, they would be reported in this section. This year we did not have any compliance findings, so there's no compliance issues to report as it relates to the audit. Our audit process, considering it was obviously a unique year auditing governments this year, just with all the restrictions, went as smooth as it could. Really appreciate Terry and Barbara and Terry's staff through our audit process. And so we successfully made it through another audit. And the city made it through another year and still in a healthy financial position. I'll certainly entertain any questions that you might have. And as well, we've had the report for a little bit, but if you now dig back into the report after going over it today and you have questions at a later point in time, you can either contact me directly or contact me through Terry, and be glad to answer any questions that you might have as you look into it a little deeper.
But in other words, the audit turned out good.
Audit turned was a good audit, yes. And the numbers are in good shape. Yeah, this covers the period of year ended June 30th, 2020. So from July 1, 19 to June 30th, 2020.
Terry did a great job, taking the money.
Terry and his staff do a very good job, yes.
He knows where it's all at, I'm sure.
I should.
We hope so, right?
As long as it's here, he knows where it's all at.
That's job security, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'm coming up, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you need things, just call us.
You see Larry, Jim asked about it.
I sure
You
will.
ever seen him?
I have not seen him in a while, really, because he's tried to stay isolated. He also takes care of his grandkids. But I probably chatted with him, basically texted with him maybe a month and a half ago.
He's over with Brother Bill, and I started in first grade together with at LaFollette back in the 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, he still loves this community.
Tim asked about it.
Sure will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is discussion of city property located on Jacksboro Pike. I think Mr. Hoskins asked for this to be put on there, and you have a map supplied in your packet.
No, I've not looked at them. I just wanted to bring this up for discussion since this apparently is not involved in any contractual requirements any further. It's a great piece of property, it's worth quite a bit of money. And I thought we should discuss the options that we have in front of us to how to dispose or utilize this piece of property.
And you know, Mark, what we got going here, we got this ATV festival, it's getting bigger and bigger every year, and you have to use a motel, terrible. You know,
Well, that's one option, is either a private investment into a motel or a public-private partnership. You know, we could be partners in with the developer and come up with a lot more than just a motel.
Yeah, I like.
We have to be innovative with it.
I like to see, since the 4 lanes is busy down through there, you know, with Food City and.
And it's the
all
last
that.
piece of property left.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, ideal place for a motel and a nice restaurant.
So how do you think we should go forward with it, Mayor? Yeah, but I have a realtor, do we have any type of an appraisal on this property, professional appraisal?
I made some notes, and that's the first thing I put down. We need to have an
There's a
appraisal.
rumor that we had one done at one time, but nobody seems to know where it is.
I don't think we ever had one done, to my knowledge.
To be fair to the taxpayers, I think that's the first thing
Oh,
we
that's
should
the
do.
first thing we need. I agree. I got it down here, I listed 3 things, and that's the first one on the list.
If, once the appraisal's done, we know what the value, and I'm divided it mentally into 2 pieces of property, the frontage on the 4 lane, and then the rear property, which is accessible in front of Mr. Troutman's office, the larger of the 2 tracks. Well, it's a single track, but it would be. Maybe, and I know we could spend untold amount of money trying to plan this thing. I don't believe in wasting money. but get some of the local developers or somebody out of Knoxville to help us decide what would be the best route to go.
Right.
That's what I put for number two, is we need a developer to help us determine
You're right on track.
what we can do with it. I mean, I think we need somebody that's got a little experience in that.
Well, we need to know what's going on today and what to plan on going on 5 years from
Well,
now.
I agree.
Hindsight's 20/20, but it doesn't get you through the
And
next
you
5
know,
years.
For years and years, not only the city, but the county, we needed an industrial recruiter to help us recruit industry. As to how do you think Anderson County got all of that industry?
They work for it.
Yeah, they had an industrial.
They have an
And
industrial
they
park
make
too.
they make some sweetheart deals. They make some sweetheart deals
Far
too.
along we got.
You know, I think that's exactly what I got written down. I mean, I think that's the first three things we gotta do. I think I don't think we can consider that we're gonna use it for a medical facility any longer, because that seems to be off the table.
You're not allowed to have 2 hospitals in a single community unless the demand's there. Is that correct statement?
Well, I mean, it's up to the state to issue distributed need. Generally, that's true.
So if this hospital that we have now ceased to exist, then it would be an option I mean, there are other pieces of property that would accommodate a hospital also.
Reed got an answer back from
I think we ought to do that now.
what we sent, but we need to do that in executive
Right,
session.
talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to discuss that.
That property has probably been on Greenbelt since the day I was born. I'm still not sure how the city of LaFollette came in possession of it. I think it's time to turn it into tax revenues.
We got it when St. Mary's gave it to us, when they was negotiating with the city to,
Did they file that for Mr. Wheeler?
They did.
So-
They initially,
so we did
they were
get
the initial
from
purchaser,
Knoxville.
then they transferred it to us later.
St. Mary's, the stipulation when they were working out the agreement to sell was that the city got that 18 acres,
We did.
or 18 and a half, whatever it
Is
is.
it titled in our name?
Yes.
Entitled back in 2011.
Been a while.
If I'm not mistaken, Reed, when Lucy's old team was the mayor, that's when he negotiated that property fee with her. Is that not right?
We got it back in our name probably about 10 years ago, I think. But I think they bought it in 07, maybe? 05, 07.
So she's the mayor.
So the first project, I guess, would be to find an appraiser that's acceptable to everyone. I've used Ben Broom in the past.
We've used less sellers.
Less is good, you know. Just maybe get them to give us an estimate or for their appraisal.
They'll be probably, I would say, between $3,000 to $5,000.
That was my guess.
And I would recommend,
I'd
picking
recommend
from
that we put 2 or 3 people on a committee here or something to work on that
Are we
together.
allowed to discuss that outside of a meeting?
Well, I mean, just the sale of the property, I don't see.
It being a raw piece of real estate, although it is on the 4-lane and is considered, the frontage will be considered retail. The appraisal will be based on what the proposed use is gonna be of the real estate, somewhat. If it's gonna have a motel or restaurants, the appraisal's gonna come in somewhat higher than it would be as a piece of raw real estate.
This council's gonna have to be kept appraised of what's going on with that, because we're gonna make a decision whether to sell or not to sell, who to sell to or not to sell to.
We could have special call meetings,
So,
keep it all out in the public eye.
If we don't do that, we need to hire somebody, like I said, we need to hire some person that can recruit somebody,
There are recruiting people.
get in contact with somebody. It costs us a little money, but listen,
Actually,
down the road, 20 years from now is what we're looking at.
actually, most of those recruiters get paid by the people looking, not necessarily us.
That's,
It needs to be.
it's the most prime piece of property that's left.
Well,
And it's
we-
probably the best prime that's ever been down there.
We need a complete concept, though. We don't want to piecemeal this together because it is such a valuable piece of property.
I agree.
Is that something MTAS can give us some guidance on?
I don't think you really need impasse involved, it's better, it's, you know, having a combination of a developer and a commercial realtor
Recruit.
to market it, you know, because you've got probably two different, like Mark said, you know, you probably have your frontage, which would be allotted, and then maybe a larger purchaser back here for a large, hotel, or, you know, whatever the case may be.
Well, that's what we could use the money as well, you know, the real estate's an asset, but the money that is produced by the sale of that frontage property, and again, I'd like to see it all as one idea, so it all works together. You could use that money, if we decide to do a public-private venture, use that money as seed money for that. All options are on the table, except for the economy.
We definitely need to utilize it for new, income.
Or some long-term leases where we retain property.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, especially on the back part, somebody constructed even a hotel, you can still own it and they lease it from you.
That would be the public-private venture.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, do we have any bankers locally that have done any public-private ventures?
Probably not locally, you see most of those in Sevier County, those are pretty standard in Sevier County.
So that's where a committee would come in handy, is
You know,
talking to these
we were
folks.
told on the last workshop that there was some core drilling went on down there, and it was so rocky that it wasn't suitable to build. How did they build their own state college there, and how did they build the UT medical building?
I moved all the dirt for the UT medical building.
Did you hit a rock?
Nope,
How did they get Bojangles in if it's so rocky?
I don't remember any rocks there either.
Let's see, I'm not so sure there's any.
Oh, that's a
core
simple
drilling went
fix.
on down there.
We send Casey down there with an excavator and dig a few holes, and we'll find out where the rock is.
Well, they also, beside Rome State, they built that children's home.
Yeah. All the rocket, Mark does that, he dumps it on every property where there's rock there. But there's no, I don't think there's no rock there.
And that, you know, this is Campbell County, there can be a seam anywhere.
Oh,
but-
absolutely.
But none has shown its head yet.
What about for across from T-Dot up there, where Gloria and Carl lives up there, Leach?
Mhm.
You see all that rock up there in the front yard?
And he kept such a pretty yard.
I know, I told him Dwayne Parrs went to buy his house, and there was rock over there.
So, how do we move forward then? Does this need to be voted on in a regular meeting?
I think if you're still in proposal phase, I would say maybe have a couple different, I think it's a couple different commercial realtors
To discuss.
to discuss it with, maybe what they would view it as, and then maybe even a developer, because I think what you're talking about is us developing the site itself. Whether, you know, subdividing the frontage and completing maybe infrastructure up here. So, you know, maybe I would start with commercial realtors as to what they felt would be the best use and, you know, of it, and then a developer shortly thereafter.
How do we find these people?
Most of the, you know, they're gonna be in, you know, probably larger city, Nashville, and maybe some in Knoxville, but a lot of them are in larger cities.
Ron,
Three, we can work it out.
Ron, over here, Community Trust Bank, Ron Longmore, she probably knows who.
Probably a few of them. Well, I dealt
Rhonda
with
has
one.
actually been involved in a couple
I know,
of
yeah.
private ventures, I believe.
Yeah, she has.
I
dealt
don't
with
know what
one.
extent or the, you know, what type of a development it was, but I believe that someone told me she has done it in the past. Maybe that's a good place to start, talk to Rhonda.
Yeah. Stan, you can hook her up, can't you, Stan?
Another job we put on.
Set up a meeting, we'll all come talk to her, you know, if she wants to share her information with us.
Well, that gets back to what we said a while ago. I mean, we're gonna have a meeting, we can discuss things as long as we don't decide anything.
Discuss policy, I believe.
So, do we need a little guidance from MTS on what we can do legally? and
You
what
talking about
we
doing
can't do?
like a subcommittee or something?
Yeah.
The subcommittees are still subject to sunshine laws, so, you know,
That's what I'm saying.
So why not just have an open meeting with everyone?
Exactly.
Just like we did on that one thing, you can have like a workshop on it, can
Yeah.
you not?
As long as it's called.
Probably the best way to do it, just have a workshop on it.
So
That would
that's
sound
how-
It's
right.
it's just an informational session.
Exactly.
Okay.
Should we, at this
Well, I think
point,
we're all on the same page.
at
That's a
this
good
point,
thing.
should
Just
we
sit
also,
there, I will do something with it.
should we also get some quotes from appraisers?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the first thing we ought to do.
Contact Brown Associates and what's.
Sellers,
what's
let's sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could get more than one, couldn't we?
I talked to a couple of banks, you know, they know who the appraisers are.
Woodford and Associates did the appraisal for the whole city several years ago when we had to put all this on appreciation.
Do
So
they
they're
specialize,
They did all the buildings and all the properties that we had at the time.
do they specialize in things for municipalities, or do they do retail or
Yes,
commercial?
I'm ready to commercial,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it
don't
does
know.
residential.
I don't know.
A little bit of everything.
That's just the people that did it before.
Might as well talk to them, absolutely. Did you write that one down, Sam?
What?
Who was it?
I'll give it to Terry.
Woodford Associates.
I am finished.
You finished?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Okay, the next thing on the agenda is discussion of salaries for codes enforcement and animal control officer. You all have asked for a breakdown on salaries. Terry has got that, and I gave it out to you all prior to the meeting. Terry?
There's two pages, one for animal control, one for code. Right now, those two positions was one person in an animal control code budget. And as of just lately, there's about 35,000 left in that budget total from now till June the 30th.
That's for both positions.
Right. But the thing about it is, these two here, those two pages has a salary on it for a year, and if you go down middle of the page, it says March through June, that gives you 4 months. But all this up at the top has his salary plus the FICA match and all of that, and then we added in the health insurance, but the health insurance is in a different budget and not in the department budget, it's in the other general government by
So
itself.
we just consider salary then.
Well,
When we're looking at the 35,613 we have left to perform both projects, or both
that's
positions.
just for salary expenditures, that does not count for health insurance, because it's in other general government.
And it's,
But we-
it's only in there one time though, because we have one employee. If we split it out, we gotta have two. don't we? Okay. So how do we change this? How do we spoke with Chief Rail, and he's agreed to some extent with animal control. I'm not sure the extent of the final conversations. How do we start the transfer process?
You are satisfactory with that?
We'll make it work. If this is what the council wants to do, we can make it work.
With these funds left, we just have enough money for one person to hold one position. We're gonna have to create more money for, let's say that we use the money that's available for the codes enforcement officer. The animal control officer won't have any funds coming with it when it's transferred to you. What will you need from us to?
Well, we would certainly would have to have the monies for the individual to be hired and to pay the salary. And of course, cover the benefits too, so.
What was the difference?
Yeah, you probably got enough to do through that through March through June for 4 months, right there in the middle of the page. There was 35,000 left in that budget, but only 18, about eight.
Would be required, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, 18.6 was for salaries, but the rest of the expenditures, which they've not used. But the way I understood it would be, if you hired both of them, they would hit this budget we've got now, because it's all together, and then at July the 1st, the code budget would be reduced to whatever you need, and then his
Rest
police
transfer.
officer would go into his regular budget, get some extra money to cover it at July 1st on past that.
Understood.
And
How do we move forward with it?
And I think he's gonna be a regular
He'll be a-
police officer.
He'll be a regular police officer, as the conversations that we have with our people. Be a regular police officer, but also hold the responsibility of being animal control as well, and taking care of those particular issues for us.
Right.
And of course, just to be honest with you, right now, we're still understaffed. So, there's a couple of positions that we have that we've got to get these people in place to make us fully staffed before we can move on and take an added.
Do you have the money in your budget to hire the additional people?
We do, yes. We've got the monies available because it was budgeted last year in this year's budget. As people leave the department for whatever reason, whether they don't like the department, whether they're looking to better themselves, whatever, that money is just sitting there until we get somebody in place to hire.
And I don't mean to jump ahead, but we have a person that's gonna be hired full-time as a, police officer too.
Level 2 officer, he's a senior officer, and works at Carroll right now, but he's gonna be coming to work for us.
How many positions will that leave you short?
Right now, they would leave us one down.
One down plus the animal control officer.
Correct.
So at what point could we, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Bill, at what point can we expect to have animal control again?
As soon as we can get the staffing up to where it needs to be.
What do we
If
do?
you authorize hiring this animal control person, if we are hiring another officer to take the responsibility of this tonight, then, certainly we would have to try to find somebody willing to come to work. We got 2 people,
One's will be animal control.
and one's willing to be animal.
What are we gonna do in the meantime,
Here's
folks?
that.
Have you got applicants right now
We
waiting to be interviewed?
We have a couple of people that have applied, but they've not met the post qualifications, which means they have to go through a post academy before we can put them on. And that's important too. But the perfect scenario for us would be to find somebody that's already a seasoned employee and has attended the police academy and are post-certified, and we just bring them in and plug them in at that
I
particular.
mean, if those experienced personnel wanna chase dogs and cats,
Well, you got a point there. You certainly got a point there.
and do we want a green one chasing dogs and
And
cats?
that's another point that
Need
we
to
have
think
to
about
look at.
this and those girls and ladies.
But I think it's something that we can do, but it's not anything that's gonna happen overnight for us. We've gotta find the right person.
What we need to do, and I don't know if it needs to happen right this minute, we've gotta make a plan for animal control until this can actually occur.
Well, we
Yeah,
pretty
right now, the fire
well
department's-
got
Yeah,
one.
the county's taking it.
The county is taking care of it.
Stan, he's doing 3 or 4 jobs.
Fire
Him and
chief.
Jimmy Pack and.
We've gotta get this burden off them, though. We need to
Well, I
start making some
understand.
decisions.
Actually, the county is helping us on animal control right
How
now.
long will they be willing to do that?
Well, hopefully until we get this position filled.
Which could be several months.
It could be a month or 2, yes, sir.
They should help you a lot because we give them about $100,000 to build that shelter, and now the other 3 cities will give them a penny.
I hear you guys tell that story, but I never hear them tell that story.
Going to.
They don't want to.
It's a good point. Well, I do
I'm
think
saying-
this, I think it'd be a plus for the city to have a police officer doing the animal control. I think you'll have more authority.
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
I don't think you'll get near as much flack. It'll help the citizens, I think, because I think we'll get better service for them. And I appreciate you, Chief, considering that we would put him under your
But-
And
department.
I don't know, we may even have an employee that's working for us right now that might like to.
What about codes enforcement? You need authority in that position also.
Hey, Wayne.
Well, we like
Back in
to
the
have
day,
a collaborative with codes
the police
people.
department, you had
Work
DPLA,
hand in hand
you
with
had
them.
Judy Broad, Judy Grocery, and you had ASU. Y'all worked under the police department. back in
When
the
I
day.
first started, it was under
The
the
police.
police department, yes.
I'm a head that's switched over. But don't ask me to do it, the last time I did, I got hit 10
I
times.
jumped off. Don't know how far I jumped off.
So,
Too old to
Way
do
in here.
Stan,
Yes,
Not far.
at this point,
yes.
are we doing okay with it to where we can
I think we
not
are.
rush into something until the chief?
I think we are, because we're getting the calls, the emergency calls are being handled, the other calls are being handled the best we can handle it. I mean, you gotta look at it, Jacksboro, Carrollville, Jellicoe don't have anybody, at least we are making.
I haven't heard any complaints yet.
No, we're staying on it as much as we can.
People call me all the time, hunting their dogs.
Well, I would say, let's just kind of put it on hold until Chief Rail
Unfortunately, we don't have a choice. yeah.
gets back with us and tells us that he's got somebody willing to do it. And he'll be a police officer. When he's not doing that, he'll be out on patrol or whatever you need him for.
Correct.
So he'll have a dual job, but basically he's gonna be animal control.
Yes, sir. Correct.
So, would you work on that?
Working on it as we speak.
Okay.
Let me ask this question, are you all gonna go ahead, do you all want to go ahead and allocate the funds for this, for these positions, with the breakdown that you have, in case he does find someone?
Terry?
Well, whoever they hire, if you hire both of them, they're gonna get the budget we've got now.
So we can transfer that budget.
Well,
It's already been allocated for the year.
it has, and in July the 1st, the post, it will come out, the code, the animal control will come out to his budget.
We just increased his.
Yeah,
budget.
increase his and then put in what you need for the codes, and it would be, they'll be separated at July 1st.
Of course, we know that that salary will be whatever a police officer's salary is gonna be.
Correct.
So,
There wasn't much difference in the description that I saw in the police officer's salary benefits as compared to what we're willing to pay for animal control. It's all virtually the same, wasn't it?
It was a little bit different, because the reason why the police officers was, they get 12 paid holidays, is that correct, Terry? That's what made the
Yeah.
difference in it, because it started out like at 30,000 something.
Yeah,
And it boosted up to
30.
70, yeah.
Yeah, that 34, 37 is the police officer, and then Barbara added that for the holiday pay, they get that whether they work or not. So we just put it on there so you can see the difference.
So we may have to increase the money a little bit then. Okay.
but from what I understand, Chief, didn't you turn back in about $200,000 surplus last year?
We did, and, we do that routinely. What we try to do is be the best stewards we can possibly be. We like the idea that Pew and Company came in and gave their report. We like to be able to say that we're a part of trying to make a solvent city. So we try our best to do the best we can.
That tells me that you're not wasting anything.
Try my best not to, yes, sir.
So, and I appreciate that.
One of these days, you're gonna have to explain to me how you do that.
Well, I can tell you, it's two main things. It's his positions that we put in the budget he hasn't filled with salary. And the second one is we put extra money in fuel in case, in everybody's budget, in case.
Price increase.
Yeah, it goes up, and he had like 60-some thousand in, 68,000 in fuel, so you add those two together and you're gonna.
We had some operational supply stuff that came back into it as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
I haven't been able to pull that trick off yet.
We need educated.
Go ahead, Stan. I think you-
So,
Okay. We're gonna move to code's position now.
we can, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I know we've got a job description here now, and I think Matt Widener has helped to
that is
put
correct.
that together for us.
Yes.
So, you've looked over it, and I'm sure everybody else has looked over it in your packet. What do you think?
I think it's all inclusive.
It's as close as you can get for the city.
It is scary when you read it, but if you just put yourself in a situation, it's what's required every day.
He did a good job.
He did, he knows his stuff, and, I was impressed with him. So that's a good.
So we have to vote to accept that as a job description?
Yes, you
Or
do.
gonna-
We
Yes.
will.
Because it's new.
Well, I'm in then.
Going back to these salaries, because I don't think y'all were clear, do you all want those on the agenda to approve? Because you have to.
I think that we need to do that, yes.
And I think we've kind of simplified, between you and Matt, the code's requirements are a lot more simplified than what they used to be.
We took 4 cities and done that. That's where that came from.
Compilation of it.
Yeah.
There's no test to pass and get certified, because we got Matt Widener doing that. I don't know how long Matt Widener will stay with us, but I wish we had somebody like that full-time.
There is, and if you look in there, there is a property maintenance course for them to take, and that's only to benefit them if they have to cite someone into court on overgrowth.
Legalities.
Yes, yes, and we thought that would be a good
And
thing.
that course is directly relevant to our new scope.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, we may ought to make that a requirement, to take that in a certain period of
I
time.
think we did.
Okay.
I think it's a year right now.
Yeah, yes,
It says here, a new hire will be given 1 year from date of
Yes.
date of hire to obtain the ICC certification as a property maintenance inspector.
yes,
So there is a certification for this?
yes,
Okay.
for property maintenance, yes.
What you got, Steve? You got what, 4 applications for code officer? Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
But it's not near what the requirements and the test used to be.
Oh, wow, no.
I mean-
The building official,
Yeah.
building official test, that thing is a monster. It's a monster.
So, yeah, let's put both of these on the agenda to approve the salaries and then, I guess the only other thing, we've got 4 applicants, which doesn't mean that we have to hire one at this point. But, we've got a lot on the stand right now.
I don't
he's-
think that there's a problem, and I would at least interviewing these four.
I don't either.
I mean, I can set them up if that's what you want. We cannot do them all in one day. If that's good with you all.
Do each of them, since we don't really have any requirements for it, it's hard to disqualify somebody.
That is true, because this will be brand new to whoever goes in there, and they will be trained to the guidelines.
I would love to do this, if we could make it to the end of this budget year and then start that person out.
We're gonna be there real quick.
That's right, I mean, it's just right around the corner.
I think these folks may be looking for work, they may be have another job offer. We need to at least give them the courtesy of looking at what they have now and saying, yes, we're considering it, or no, we're not, and let them move forward with their life.
Good idea.
I will look over those this week and get those set up, and I'll get with you all and let you all know. Is that okay with you, Mayor?
It's really good.
Philip?
Yes.
Desmond?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I would also, while we're on these 2 items, and our next opening is the city administrator, I think we ought to just move on along the stand right now until the end of this fiscal year. Now, we've got a lot on him, maybe we need to give him just a little more money than what we offered him. And he took it to start with, but he's doing 3 jobs.
Can you temporarily give a salary increase for something of this nature, Terry?
I know, back when I was temporary city instead of the second time, they just added on, the council said what it was, and they just added on.
The money's there, it was already budgeted
Yeah,
for this
They
year.
did it, but we've done it before.
We just clarify, and whatever you notice, it's for the interim.
And I know he's worked in all areas. I've asked him to do 3 or 4 things, and he's worked on them, and we've got some of the information in our packet tonight, especially with some run-down, dilapidated buildings along the 4-lane, one in particular. And he's talked to that fella, and he's put him something in writing, and what you give him, 7 to 10 days?
And I actually heard from him today.
Okay, but there's been some other lots around that started being cleaned up that we were having issues out of. And You know, there's a lot to be done in the line of these codes.
There it is.
There's a lot of them.
Well, about the administrative position, we've got applicants on that also, don't we?
You do.
Might as well do the interview with those and, you know, let them know what their status is. Are we still advertising? Do we need to reauthorize the
No,
advertising?
That stopped February the 11th.
Should we reauthorize the advertising or
I think we should.
interview these folks and then re-advertise?
I think, Stan, what do you got, three, right, Stan?
Yeah.
Three of them?
3 or 4.
Well, we closed them on the 11th. I do think we need to go ahead and interview the ones that applied.
They applied within the time frame, yes.
And they did it within the time frame, and we need to follow through with their end, and if they're not suitable, we don't have to hire them. I mean, it's not an easy job. You gotta know what's going on. If you've not worked in this line of work, then, you
It's,
did
it's,
a
it's
lost
just,
ball in high water,
it's
as they
just,
used to say.
it's not just this line of work. If you haven't experienced the everyday ongoings of the city of LaFollette, it'll chew you up and spit you out.
That's exactly right. Okay, you set those interviews up too for us?
We need to put some time restraints on the interview, 10 minutes per person or something of that nature.
10-4. We'll do those on, you wanna do them on the same day, or you wanna do them 2 separate days?
How
I
many
do
do we
'em
have
2
total?
separate days. You probably got, what,
We
8
got
total?
4,
Yeah,
4.
3, 7,
Let's see here.
and then the other one's got.
Well, we don't wanna rush it. If, you know, if a candidate seems to be a good candidate, we might wanna spend more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's totally up to
Let's,
you all.
let's do it 2 different days.
Looks like we've got 4 for codes enforcement.
We got 3 or 4 for administrative.
Yes.
4 administrative.
I've got 8 altogether.
I'm for 2 different days.
Okay.
Is there any certain day of the week that's better for anybody?
It rains every day. I'm in construction.
Well, I'm sure Friday would be a bad day, because that's usually payday for me.
Monday's lousy too.
Monday's lousy
You
too.
set it up, and I will be here.
3 and 4, I'll get it done.
Accommodate with these other folks first.
Okay. We took care of the discussion of the open positions, so we'll move down to the police department, discussion of police policy for accreditation. Chief?
Yes, sir. Of course, I've turned around and requested that the council take a look at the policies that we've provided to them. It's new standards, new policies that gets us where we need to be along with state laws and things of that nature. And I think it's just good business for us to keep a current updated policy manual. And this, in conjunction with the manual that we have, we're going to certainly utilize it as well. We'll make up the policies for our department, and it will be available for the officers via their laptop computer, which they already have in the car. And so they'll be able to pull it up at any readily available time.
Are the officers excited about this? They know enough about it to make a decision?
My thought process would be this, the officers, certainly we want them to be comfortable with it. And before I implement
That's
these.
really what I meant to say.
Yeah, before I turn around and actually implement the policies, I would like to spend some time with the officers and go over each and every policy with them. We're going to have to move to get the current policies available. It's only good business to do so. If you sit and run off antiquated policies and things of that nature, you're just looking for potential lawsuits to come available, things like that. This will just allow us to kind of offset some of those potential lawsuits as well. So I do intend to have classes to where the officers can come and we'll sit down and we'll discuss the policies.
I know in my industry, which is a very dangerous industry, the people who are in charge, whether it's the corporations that own the towers that we work on, whether it's the insurance companies that insure us, they create so much unnecessary training and paperwork, which is really just a waste of time and very expensive.
Right.
I don't want to create that situation with this.
It won't be. It will be, you know, they'll be made, they'll be afforded the latitude to know that these things are easily available to them. I'll actually set it up in here to where that they can come in. We can pull the policies up on the computer, take a look at the ones that they have questions about, answer any questions that they have. And it won't be something to where we're gonna be spending a whole bunch of time on it, but we're gonna spend significant time to make them comfortable.
Did you see all the seats that's already created?
I did.
What I've looked over, I think your recommendation to do it is probably a good thing. I mean, everybody needs to be on the same page. Everybody needs to have access, easy access to whatever situation that they're going to be going into. Keep in mind, spur of the moment decisions are going to arise.
Absolutely,
And,
absolutely.
you don't know what you'll do in that regard. There's times that you just have to make a decision, and it may be wrong, but it might be the best decision at that time.
That's true, but this affords them a roadmap to help them, guide them through those particular
So
situations.
I think it's probably a positive thing. You got my support.
Thank you for answering the questions that were submitted.
You're welcome.
So we will put that on the agenda. Any other questions? Okay, discussion on opening new special drug enforcement account. Bill, that's you again.
Okay, we have, what this is we have to have a line item in our drug account. It allows us to put into the bank any monies that we take off of somebody that we seize that hasn't been awarded to us yet. Because if by chance, for example, that the monies, once it goes, that's adjudicated, they aren't awarded to the city, then we have to give those monies back to them. So this line item, all it is a line item in our drug fund to help keep those separate.
Where would the funds actually be kept, in the city's coffer?
It'll be kept in the bank, yes.
It will be a separate checking account, but it will be part of and it will have its own set of accounts, but it will actually be part of the drug enforcement fund in the end. It's an account group, it's in the drug fund, but each checking account has its own set of accounts, so it will be in the drug fund in the bank.
You said it's required, so.
It is, and
We have to do it.
Right.
Bill, I think they just don't want them commingled with either in funds in your budget or the general fund or anything. They want it
Correct.
separate in its own
Just
account.
entirely separate, so it's
And
not.
the judge gets to choose what the judge wants to do with that money.
Yes, sir.
That account. I'll agree.
Any other questions on it? We'll put it on the agenda. The next thing, approval of promoting Melissa Hatmaker to full-time dispatcher, currently part-time at a salary of $22,464, effective 3/13/2021. Chief?
It says here. She's got this in Melissa's too.
Well, she is here, and she's done us a good job. She's a new hire. Last year, sometime in one of the council meetings as well, it was voted on that we do not have any further part-time employees in dispatch, that all dispatchers are to be full-time. So this is just meeting that requirement. It's moving her, since we've got her in here and we're working her temporarily, it's moving her from that temporary status into a permanent status.
Well, that Susan, she's doing a good job.
Excellent.
I
Finish
talked to
up
her. I talked to all that.
10:46.
We'll put that on the agenda. approval of promoting Anthony Mahar to full-time level 2 patrol officer, currently part-time at a salary of $32,457.40, effective 3/13/2021. Chief?
We spoke a little bit about Mr. Mahar. He is a full-time officer right now in another city. He's going to be leaving there. He has, comes to us with experience. He's also been working with us part-time, so, which allows us to move him into a full-time status.
What, dude, he's been with us for about 2 years, so.
Yeah, 2.5, 3.
That's good. That's good.
Right.
Okay, we'll have that on the agenda. That's all that's on this agenda, so is there any, Wayne, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think so. At what point do you think we need to have another executive?
I'm ready when you guys are. We got our answer just ironically today, you and I talked with Stan, and just whenever you guys wanna meet, we can meet that. Whenever I'll make my time available for you guys.
Do y'all want to do it at the end of this week or the first of next week?
Let's do
We'll
it
schedule one.
next week. I got some doctor's appointments.
Like I said, it's gonna rain for 7 days.
Where we're at?
Starting Friday morning right here.
Morning time, afternoon, evening, what y'all want to do?
What's best for you?
Any day other than a Tuesday,
Other than
bad
Tuesday.
day.
Whatever you say. Let's make it,
Wednesday's a good one.
let's make it 9 o'clock in the mornings. I don't have to everybody. Get it over with. Got the rest of the day.
In the morning?
No, next week.
Next
Good
week.
time for you.
We do it 9 a.m. one
Yeah.
Whatever you say.
next week.
I'm feasible anytime, unless I've got to take my daughter to the doctor. I got to take her tomorrow, but next week I don't know what day it'll be.
We can take one meeting.
Huh?
I gotta go too.
Thursday, Friday,
You
good
want
one.
No,
Next
Thursday.
week.
Yeah, Thursday or
I'll
Friday.
take it
Friday, good
Thursday or
one.
Friday?
I'll take you Thursday, don't worry about that. I've got nothing else to do.
Mayor, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, Stan, that guy that, day here a few months back on this flood at the church at James,
Humor, yes.
him, he called me every day, me and Phil, and he was questioning about it, and I didn't know anything about it. When this happened, he sent a bill for like $3,000 in the city. I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't sign it. Well, next thing I know, he called me and said he ain't cashing that check, and Barbara told me, if I sign checks, I don't know what I'm signing, I asked her about it. Well, I asked Barbara about it, and it's still $3,000. The hot rod signed a check for $400. Now he's questioning.
Well, you know, I actually spoke to his wife day before yesterday, I think. And I actually also spoke to the comptroller's office in regards to it also. And the investigator that investigated, her name was Miss Jones, and I asked her the question, do we pay him or do we not pay him? She says, I can't tell you to pay him, and I can't tell you not to pay him. But I can tell you in my investigation that we did, he shared as much information with us as he did with you all in the council meeting that night. That he gave her the information, but he never gave her the supporting documents to support it. And she said, I can't tell the city whether to pay it or whether not to pay it. And she said, on the report that we will receive, there is nowhere that Mr. Emmert was even, nowhere his name will show on the report. So, I mean, that's up to the council, if you all choose to, if you choose not to. I mean, if they didn't find anything, I think you should just let it go. I mean, as far as that goes, but I mean.
And I remember him coming up here, and we asked him for some documentation to support. He kind of did us the same way. He threw a lot of things out there, and then when we asked him to support what he was talking about and support his bill.
It's specifically an itemized bill.
I've never received it. I can't say that
They
it
didn't
never
receive
came.
it either, because I asked that specifically
So
if they had
that's kind of where we
received it.
left it with him, produce it.
Did we actually hire that fella in any form?
Jimmy called you or something, didn't you, Reed?
That's what I think so, and my understanding was when he got here, he was here for a little while at our request, and that's the reason we sent him the $400, because we tried to come up with a fair amount to pay him for the few hours he was here. And from what I understand, from what, and you were there, you can tell, he was a direct witness to it, that we terminated our involvement with him and whatever.
Within 2 hours of them arriving.
Yeah, and we told him to go.
So he was just here 2 hours.
Yeah.
And day two, they escorted, told him to leave town, and that time arrested.
And, I mean, you know, you would think that.
There was no
Tima-
offer nor acceptance of a contract.
You would think Tima would send somebody up here to.
FEMA didn't send them. You can't find FEMA, you can't find FEMA, you have to have somebody that knows how to find them. That's what we
Now,
thought
wait a
he
minute,
was.
Now, wait a minute. FEMA is a federal
FEMA's
organization.
FEMA's state,
FEMA's
FEMA's federal.
state.
There's no
They
phone number in the
gotta
book.
have, they gotta have someplace to get a hold of those people.
Email.
If you need them, they'll come to you,
If they think,
if they think you need them.
yeah.
But Jimmy did call him anymore.
He
That's
called
correct.
it, Jimmy's brother had some association with, OSHA, I believe. And in this association, you know, these are all federal agencies, you learn how the game's played. He had ran into this guy, apparently he had was someplace where there was some damage, ran into this guy, was familiar with his name, and he just threw it at Jimmy. We all were just grabbing for anything we could get a hold of. And so we called him, Jimmy called him, asked him, told him the situation, he said, be glad to come out and talk to you. Came out, we met right here in the conference room. We went to the church and to the, what they call the women's facility there. Chet. And I'll agree with you. He knew the terminology, he knew what you should and should not be doing. But he started soliciting business, representing as if he were working for the city of LaFollette to work for them. That's when Jimmy told him that was against the law, you can't do it, please stop. He continued to do it. We took him to the other end of town, bought him lunch, and told him that we didn't want him back anymore. We were not gonna hire him. Next day, showed up on his own. He had the keys to the women's facility, to every building. I think it took them several days, if not a month, to get those back. And that's when Mr. Foster told him to leave town or he would be arrested.
Sounds to me like,
I have no intention of paying
sounds
him
to
a
me like
dime.
you should have kept the $400 check they signed and cashed it, because it seems to me like we don't know him nothing. If nobody approved him being here.
I don't know what authority Jimmy would have even had hiring somebody under an emergency circumstance, but I'm sure he would have called each and every one of the council members and discussed it with them. I know that there was no offer made and there was no acceptance made of any financial amount of money. And you can't have a contract without that.
Well, probably what we do is that Reed checked into it. Reed, you talked to him.
No, we requested that night, and I think I even sent him something, requesting support of his, what he did and support of.
He was in a one-line item bill.
Yeah, the bill beside, that's it.
Well, you had to go over there and talk to the comptroller too on that situation.
I was interviewed, yes.
Well, was you satisfied with everything when you left there?
They don't tell you a lot. Well, I was satisfied that I was right then and I'm right now. We had no contract, verbal or otherwise.
So you,
And if he wants his money, he needs to just hire a lawyer, file a lawsuit, and that little folder he kept telling us that he wanted me to see. He said, y'all can look at this anytime you want to. 4 times I said, could I look in your folder, please? Could I look in your folder, please? Turned the other way. Nobody ever got all that folder. Because there's nothing in it.
where does this fellow live?
Comptroller said that.
Yeah.
Where's he located? Where's he live?
Maryville, I think.
Maryville?
Yeah. Down that direction, that
Sounds
general
to me like
direction.
you're not willing to pay him anything.
I would have paid him for his time, for coming up here, even though he did some things he shouldn't have done. I was okay with the $400.
Well, now,
But not $4,000.
Then I would agree to go along with that, but if he don't want that, I think he needs to get.
That check had paid in full on the bottom, that's why he sent it back.
Did he send it back to the city?
I believe he did, did
I believe he did.
I don't know.
I'll have to ask Barbara if we got it.
I
I think
understand,
he
he said,
did.
yeah, his wife said,
They wouldn't cash it.
They wouldn't
Well, it's
catch it.
because
They
it's
said
paid in
No,
full.
she said she would catch it. That's what
Or
she
for
told me.
services rendered, whatever the culmination would be.
So, I mean, I would agree to pay him what everyone's offered him for his time.
The man came in here, he called Jimmy Jeffries a thief and a liar. He basically called me a liar, and in fact, he was the only liar in the room. I have no patience, nor do I have any time for people that are like that.
Do we need to act on that at the regular meeting?
Not really, I mean, unless you just, I mean, pay it just directed to be paid. If you don't want to, then, you know, I think what I wanted to do was to offer him something for his time. Because we obviously did bring him up here, so that was the purpose of the 400, is that we extended that. They don't want it, they don't want it. And I think he's right, if they wanna sue us, then they can sue us. We have to
And
be able to-
you'll do that. You'll send him something and tell him what's been.
We've already done.
Oh, you've
We've already done it,
done
and now he's already sent it back.
He just shows up every 6 months.
Okay.
He'll
Okay.
probably be at one of the council meetings. So we did request for full details of any supporting documentation of everything that he threw out there tonight. To my knowledge, we've never gotten it. So
That's true, because comptroller asked for the same, and they didn't get it either.
I say it's a dead issue unless they bring it up in a court of law.
That's where we are next.
Everybody agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's about all we can do, you know, to be honest with you.
We can't pay taxpayers' money out to somebody who didn't do anything. It's just not right.
Well, he cheated me writing my check, I didn't write you no check, you know?
Well, and that payment was out of good faith. I mean, that was just,
We didn't have to. There was no discussion of any money. He volunteered upon, when the phone call was made, he said, I'm on my way. He didn't say we pay him, he didn't say he charged us.
do we need to have, does it need to be in the form of motion for us to be able to solicit for appraisals? Does it have to be brought up in a motion?
Not until we spend the money, I don't think so.
Right. Because all we're gonna do is talk to
We're
her
just
right now.
have them come in and give us an estimate of it.
Well, let me bring up one more thing. The old building's down here by Katie's. We're kind of at a standstill, is that right?
That's correct.
It's in court.
It's in court, so we.
Probably more likely than not, they will, hopefully, I mean, we're kind of on the outside looking in, even though we're in a lawsuit, they just brought us in probably to keep them from initiating any type of municipal court action to keep them from having to tear it down, so.
I know Casey took his crew and they went down there and put up a new fence all the way around that
Yeah, that's all we can do right now.
thing this week, so.
Could we get a hold harmless agreement from the current property owner? In case somebody does get hurt, they can sue the city.
We've done all we can do at this point.
We've done exactly what Watson
Yeah.
Roach has advised.
Yep.
Because we had some folks earlier last week that had commented in regards to that on Facebook and everything like that, but I think I took care of that issue, explaining that it is in litigation, and when we're in litigation, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do until whatever comes out of the litigation.
How long for an adjudication on it?
You know, it's really, we're kind of, like I said, we're on the outside because it's really between two private citizens, two adjoiners. So I don't know, I think we're just gonna be kind of watching what they do, so
I've been watching for 2 years.
Yeah.
But really, we don't have anything to do with it, just to save the people.
That's true.
When this is over, we need to establish policy so that this can never happen.
Well, I mean, it's, that's so
Common law
unusual.
building.
That common law is tough, that's tough.
But we've got a whole street full of
Oh,
it,
yeah.
several of them.
Mayor, do you have anything else?
I'm good.
Philip?
I'm fine.
Ms. Stephanie?
Yes, sir.
Mark? One other thing, and I told this gentleman that I would bring it up to you all at the workshop for your all's consideration. Had a gentleman to call last week. He was concerned with some issues of animal safety in their shelter. He would like for you all sometime in the future consider changing the definition of shelter, which is in our ordinance, and it says adequate. We mirror the state policy, and the county, I actually spoke to the county, and the county said that the state was actually working on redefining shelters for animals. And I think that would be something that you all could take into consideration.
Let's continue mirroring.
Okay, that'll work. Anything else?
You know, we had built animal shelter a while ago, we never had no problems with nothing.
No.
Until we give money to go to do it, we had no problems.
That's true.
Thought we were fixing it.
All right, so
That's right.
Meeting's adjourned.
Hey,
How
Ray-
about
Ray-
it?
Ray-
There you go.
Just by the hospital, I'm ready to put animal shelter.
That's right.
That thing's ready to fall.